Here's a subject that will gel with many of you, maybe all of you, I don't know. There was a time in my life when I was absolutely brimming with energy. But I used to use a lot of energy, and every night I'd go to bed exhausted because I would have worked all day. I worked really hard in my life, people. I was a really hard worker. You know, manual work with my own business, and then of course in the end office work with my own business and the whole management of running the business and all that. It's a lot of work. And then I'd go back to the wife, or my girlfriend maybe at the time, and I'd drink wine and have some merriment, and then maybe we'd go out sometimes, and then we'd go to bed. And I remember, of course I would have gone to the gym, worked really hard in the gym, and back in those days, very often 2 hours. But now, I go to the gym, say like on one day, and I don't really feel like going again for another 3. And it's worse in the winter. This is what I'm getting to, people. In the summertime, you know, when it's light early, and so your circadian rhythm has kicked in earlier, and it's bright outside, and it's enticing, and it's warm, and it's sunny. All those things, they lift the spirit, don't they? But of course, in weather like this, well, you know, we do what most animals do. We just close down for the winter. There's not much going on. There's just a bit of survival instinct going on. And the rest of the time, maybe we're storing energy. Like all of my squirrel friends, they're all packed on a few pounds in anticipation for the winter. And the amount of people I speak to that just say they're exhausted. And it's not even just because they're out of shape and they're overweight and they're old. No, young and fit people are just exhausted. And I'm like, you know, I should have gone to the gym today. I'm like, I don't know, I might, you know, because the gym doesn't open until 3 o'clock today, which is curious, I know, but by that time, you know, I probably would have warmed up. I probably would have had a beer by then and thought, fuck it, I'll go and do it. But I'm just feeling tired. And very often these days, always I would have like an hour's meditation nap, sort of like early evening time, about 5 or 6 o'clock, and it'd be like between 40 minutes and an hour. These days I'm going back for round 2. I'm maybe doing it about 4 o'clock, and I'm going back there again for 7 o'clock. And I'm just like, oh my God, my body's physically aching. And the recovery rate is much slower. And I could attribute that to my age, but it's nothing like as bad as that in the summertime. There's just more vitality there. So how many of you really struggle with this facet of life? How many of you suffer from the SAD disorder, seasonal affective disorder? My old man suffered from it greatly. He got depressed. I don't get depressed. I've been very, very lucky. The only time I was depressed for many years in my life was due to the dark night of the soul. But under normal circumstances, my mind, it creates the relevant amount of serotonin and dopamine and all those neurotransmitters that keep my mind bright, keep my mind active, keep my mind engaged and desirous to do things. And from the moment I get up to the moment I go to bed, I'm busy. And I'm always thinking to myself, how on earth did I used to work very often 16 hours in a day and still live a life or feel as if I was living a life. Granted, I had an enormous amount of energy when I was younger, and so I would go out and I'd work my 10 hours, and I'd go to the gym for 2 hours, and I'd go to the pub for another 2 hours, and then eat sex for 2 hours, and you know, whatever. Yeah. These days I can't imagine having a relationship. I can't even conceive of how I would ever work again, particularly like, let's say, in the wintertime, getting up and leaving the house in the dark and in the rain. Not doing it. Just not doing it, people. Just not doing it. Coming back in the dark, not doing it. Sitting in the traffic with the wipers going boo, 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 in dark streams of traffic, not doing it. Just not doing any of those things. And you know, I've been seeking out, trying to find someone who I can speak to about this work stuff. And I was listening to a video by Marina Kovnova or something like that. She wears a little bit of a hat like mine. She talks about psychology and things like that. If anyone's interested, then I'll send you a link of her channel. But she's kind of like Russian bird. You know, she's butch, and there's nothing feminine about her at all. You know, she's bright, she's educated, she's done that, and she's had a lot of experience. But just saying aesthetically. So she speaks about all these psychological issues in therapy. She was in therapy for years and years and years. And then I watched this video and she's speaking about how we're slaves. We're born into a prison planet and all the rest of it. Well, anyone that's been remotely awoke has known this for many, many years. And albeit I didn't learn anything from her discourse, it was a reminder of all the myriad ways that we are enslaved, with all of the licenses we need and the permits we need and permissions that we need and the taxes that we pay, and then we pay a tax when we've earned our money, and then we pay a tax when we spend our money. Goodness me. There's thousands of instantiations that we are all slaves. And you can brush this all off, people, by saying, yeah, well, we've all got to contribute. I mean, where would the money come from to pay these paths and to tarmac the roads and put the street lights in and, you know, all that sort of stuff. There's something to be said for all that, of course. But then there's something to be said for the overkill of it all, the excessive taxation. I mean, look, if you're looking at alcohol and cigarettes, there's an enormous amount of tax that we pay on them and that companies pay, and it all goes to the government because they profit from people's addictions. And it's very immoral, isn't it? It's very immoral. But that's what they do. And, you know, people could say, yeah, well, we've all got to contribute because, you know, somebody's got to make your jackets and your hats, Aaron. And somebody's got to tarmac these paths, and, yeah, all this stuff's got to be done. But then, how much unnecessary money is spent, wasted on armaments? On, let's just say, like nuclear warheads that will never ever be used and should never ever be used. They should never ever be built, but they are, and it's supposedly with taxpayers' money. And then when you've got all these wars going on, and a classic instance of this is at the end of the Iraq War, and even in Afghanistan and all around that region, America just ups and leaves trillions of dollars worth of equipment behind to the enemy. Who paid for all that? The American taxpayer. And so is the American taxpayer happy about that? Would there be, or let's just say, how many realms would there be where the American taxpayer could be disgruntled about the complete and utter waste of the money that they are having to pay their life force? It's their life. You know, this Marina Petrova, or some fucking thing. She was saying that, you know, people averagely, they have to. You're doing a fine job there, sir. Look at that. I say you're doing a fine job there. Do you get job satisfaction from that?
Well, it looks alright, but then the next day it's back again.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's like painting the Fourth Bridge. You know, this massive long bridge goes over San Francisco Bay. By the time they finish painting it, they've got to start painting it again. It takes 4 years. But like, yeah, all that slipping over it, and you know, it's potentially very hazardous. Yeah. You're doing a good job, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
You see what a nice chap I am. I'm such a jolly nice chap. I appreciate him because look, walking on that path with those leaves, you're slipping and you risk putting your back out, falling down and smashing your skull open. But that kind gentleman was giving away his life force to prevent that happening. And so it's a jolly good thing indeed. And then you've got this gentleman who's trimming all these hedges back to a decent shape and size, so not too much protrusion going out on the path and all those sort of things. So I was speaking to my daughter last night, and I'm saying, I went to the optician the other day, and the optician, he's been there for years. I've been going to see that particular optician for about 10 years, and it's his business. And he goes through this pattern of super being pleasant to everybody, and it's the same old thing. Okay, and now is this clearer or less clear? What is he like now? What about this one? And he's doing all this with this changing all the glasses and fucking lenses, you know, in your thing. And, you know, he's very, very calm and very pleasant and makes everyone feel so comfortable. And I said to my daughter, this fucking dude, he does that shit like 10, 15 times a fucking day, 5 days a week, forever. And she says, well, you know, what would you do if people like him didn't do that? And I'm not disputing the necessity of people like that doing it. I'm questioning the ability to be able to do it. That's what I'm questioning. Now, I was listening to Alan Watts' video last night, and you know, true to form, what happens is, I don't know, maybe your feed just feeds you all this stuff that's relevant. There's a lot of that going on, but lots of it is kind of like it's divine. You know, you sent this stuff from the divinity. So Alan Watts, he's saying, some things about the spiritual awakening. Of course, it's always going on about that. But he's saying what people don't know is that people who are spiritually awoken, their whole consciousness is just transformed. And basically he was saying that we find ourselves as if we are aliens on the planet which we once considered we were an integral part of and belonged to, and always belonged to, and always would belong to it. But what happens is, when we have a spiritual awakening, we feel very much like we're not from here. And we start to question, well, where are we from? And we look around and everyone else seems like aliens. You know, it's kind of like, well, I once seemed to fit in with all that stuff, chasing paper and wanting to make a future for myself, and not paying too much attention to the machinations of the world and the cosmos and spirit, because you've got your eyes on nearer things like that nice shiny new style Jaguar that you want, and so you're all focused on that. And this is how it goes, it's the devil's trinkets, isn't it? But then when you have this spiritual awakening, well, all that stuff pales into insignificance, and you don't want any of it anymore. And in actual fact, if you've got it, then it's all just a burden to you, and you just got to get rid of it because you just can't be dealing with it. And I said to my daughter, look, the last thing I ever want to do again is look for a car parking space. I just can't imagine me doing that. I spent years and years and years, of course, highly frustrated when you're in a built-up region and you just want to pop in that shop there, but there's nowhere to park. And you've got these little Hitlers walking around all over the place. They're going to slap you a £60 fine on the car with glee should you contravene one of those parking regulations. So, I'm going to see my psychiatrist tomorrow, and he's going to say, well, how can we help you? How can I help you? And I'm going to be trying to broach how and why I'm feeling like I am. And my therapist said to me, well, if you're feeling wonderful, Aaron, well, there's nothing for us to do, because she was a trauma-based therapist. And I says, well, look, I feel wonderful now, but I didn't feel wonderful for many, many years. And I feel wonderful now because I've emancipated myself from the vast majority of the trappings of the world and governments and societies and all that. But I said one of the reasons I'm here is because those trappings may rear their ugly heads again in the not too distant future, because all that needs to happen is a new government policy comes in, and then all of a sudden, they're hunting down everybody on benefit, and they want to bring everybody in to give them the physical fitness test to triply, quadruply make sure that you can't possibly work. And it got to the state in the last government, whereby they had this one of the prerequisites that they wanted you to perform when they came out to see you, or you went to see them, was raising your hand above your head. And if you could raise your hand above your head, then obviously you could write with it or pick up a telephone. Aha! Well, you could do a job with telephony, fucking answering phones, or you could be fucking one-handed on the fucking computer. You could be doing something. That's the lengths and breadths and depths that they were digging into. And all what it was, as long as you weren't completely fucking bat crazy, that you were just a little bit compass mentis. I saw a glimmer of consciousness in your eye when I mentioned your name. You responded to your name, so well, you must be able to respond to people on the telephone then. And it got so bad. It's really, really fucking. And they think Nazism ended in 1945. Really, people. It's still very, very prevalent all over the world. And, it's fascism. That's what it is. Coercing all of the citizenry into doing this and to doing that, and to making money for the country, making the countries more and more powerful, and then exhibiting and exercising their power over you. Oh, it doesn't end, does it? And so a British subject could get very, very vexed about the amount of money being spent on our surveillance in every conceivable fucking realm. The more we work, the more we get taxed, and the more fucking cameras are going up all over the place. And if you stop and ask yourself, hang on, who the fuck's paying for this? You're paying for it, muppet. Your fucking tax pound is paying for that. And it's kind of like, well, what fucking idiot would do that? What fucking idiot, day in and day out, would get up to build their own prison? That's effectively what we're doing, isn't it, people? We're all building our own prisons. And so I thought, and I've seen it all. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm opting out of it. And then, like my therapist, being the liberalist she was, well, do you think that's fair if you didn't work and other people had to work? So, do I think that's fair? As if it's just like a yes or no answer. And as if there's nothing to think about other than the fairness. If somebody else has to work, then do you think it's fair that you do? Does nothing else come into it? Does not history come into it? Does not government conspiracy come into it? Does not the fake democracy come into it? Does not fascism come into it? Does not fucking indentured slavery, come into it? All these things come into it, of course they do. And if you're a thinking person, then you give lots of these thoughts considerable thought. Or lots of these subjects considerable thought. And so, when I'm going to go and see my psychiatrist, which, my only saving grace, I think, is that he's African. And so, he's at least grown up in a third world country, where life was very cheap and the education was non-existent. And so somehow he got an education in another country, doubtless Britain, and now he's working in Britain. So he would have evidently come from one of the colonies, and it could very well have been Ghana, Gambia. He looked dark. I would think he's probably from Gambia. I'm going to ask him. But one of the British African colonies. And so he's been through that mill, and he has had his whole brain washed. And I'm going to ask him, I'm going to say, well, look, you're asking me what you can do for me, or what I want you to do for me. I'm going to ask him, have you any awareness of the mental state people go through when they have a spiritual awakening? And if he says no, or deflects the question, you see, because these people, they will never ever let you know that they don't know anything, because they always want to be in the position of power. They will just be quiet. And it's like my therapist, often I'd say to her, I don't know whether you're aware, and this, that, and the other, but she'd never say anything. She'd give this poker look, because it was vastly, too below her to say, well, no, I've not actually come across that really. Because then you would know something more than them, and they hate that. And obviously that's one of the things she hated about me, that I just ran rings around her intellectually, because all she could do was work within two very narrow parameters of her indoctrination. And so I'm going to see if, this African guy has got a bit more about him. Now, because he grew up in a third world country, then he would have seen a great deal more than the average Joe which grows up in a first world country, because they know everything is corrupt and life is cheap, and there's a lot to be grateful for in life. And so I'm going to see how that goes, but I've just got to instill upon him that there's lots of people, and there's going to be lots more people, because when society is moving vastly in a different direction, it destabilizes a great number of the citizenry, and it's going to cause them a lot of distress. And there's going to be lots of these people who are having awakening moments, and they're going to feel confused, they're going to feel depressed, and they're going to want some sort of assistance, and maybe the government's going to be still trying to press gang them into work, and this, that, and the other. The government needs to know about this, and so this is just a tentative beginnings of bringing awareness to see how susceptible they are to that. And if I could be forwarded to another broader therapist where I could talk more about it, and he always say, well, what do you think is going to come out of it? And you know, I can't say, well, I'm just looking for someone to ease my anxiety or to stop me being afraid, you know, because that's all they can do, really. They'll send you to therapy if you're anxious, and they'll try to reason with you as to why you're anxious, and if they can't do that, then they'll prescribe you some pills, and that's about it, people, that's about it. And so, of course, you know, to be reasonable, there is no hope. There is no hope because these people live in a different world, and the government are not, you know, into spiritual awakening and waking up from the fucking matrix, are they? They don't even acknowledge that it's a thing, that people can actually wake up from the matrix. Oh my goodness, the world we live in, people, it is very bizarre. It really is bizarre because there's so many fictions going on, there's so many fantasies, there's so many delusions, there's so many false and fake projections. I mean, government, that's all governments do. They just project fake shit from beginning to the end. And you know, this fucking keep them busy bread and circus thing, of course this came out of Rome 2,000 years ago. It's nothing new. And the tactics are the same. Keep them busy, keep them hypnotized, give them the blood and the gore, and then give them free bread. Wow, what else can they fucking want? They've got everything. They've got bread in their belly, and they've got blood, and they don't even have to get their hands dirty. You know, goodness me, people. Anyway, gonna go and buy a few bits, and then I'll be back.